Last year's Miami Hurricanes team was interesting. While they arguably had the best quarterback in all of college football, the Canes ended up missing out on the college football playoff due to their defense. They had a couple of dumb games last year, and it cost them an opportunity to compete at the highest level. Miami has been clowned upon the last couple of seasons, but now they are finally putting things together, and Coach Cristobal has the Canes rolling. 2025 I don't think will be any different for them, as while they did lose a couple of key pieces, they gained a ton of good players through the transfer portal, have a somewhat favorable schedule, and have enough momentum to once again be playoff contenders. In today's video, we're going to preview the 2025 Miami Hurricanes, go through their roster, talk about last season, who they added and dropped, and then I'll do a game-by-game prediction and give my thoughts on next year's Canes team. But before we get started, if you're a big fan of college football, be sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like if you want to support today's video, and let me know what player, team, topic, or situation I can cover next. Now let's go ahead and preview Miami. So last year was interesting. They brought in a couple of big players out of the portal, and that included quarterback Cam Ward and running back Damian Martinez. They started out the season on the road against Florida, and in a game that everyone thought would be somewhat close, Miami absolutely wiped the floor, winning 41-17. Cam Ward showed he was super special. After that, they'd go home and beat Florida A&M before destroying Ball State 62-0. The first 3 weeks went according to plan, and then luckily they survived a trap game against South Florida, and it was never close, and they won 50-15. By the end of September, the Canes were a top 10 team and still undefeated. The first controversial game of the season would come against Virginia Tech, and Kyron Drones ended up having a Hail Mary fall through for the Hokies, but it was called back. Miami survived that game, and they would continue to stay lucky. After being down badly on the road against Cal, Cam Ward mustered up an insane comeback, and Miami won 39-38. But despite having 2 straight close calls, nothing would change, as on the road against Louisville, Miami would once again only win by 1 touchdown. The Canes at this point were 7-0, but a lot of people felt that they were fraudulent and did not deserve to be where they were. Things would continue smoothly for 2 more games, as they would beat Florida State 36-14, and then after originally struggling with Duke, they would pull away, winning 53-31. Finally, Miami came crashing down, as while they were ranked number 4 in the country, they would lose on the road to Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech is a tough team to beat, and Haynes King got him. After that, they'd come back home and destroy Wake Forest, and if they could just win 1 more game, they would pretty much be locked in for a college football playoff spot, and also would be going to the ACC title game. If they lost, all heck would break loose. Well, that's what would happen. They travel on the road to play against Syracuse, who was one of the sneakier teams in college football last year, and their defense just couldn't get stops. They ultimately lost 42-38, opening up a spot for Clemson in the ACC title game. Cam Ward lost the Heisman, and they would not end up going to the college football playoff. They would face off at number 18 Iowa State in the Pop-Tarts Bowl, and Cam Ward would play a couple of series, break a record, and then quit on the team, and they would end up losing 42-41. Miami lost 3 of their last 4 games, but could easily have lost 5. The Virginia Tech and Cal games were somewhat controversial, but in total, Miami ended up finishing the year ranked number 18 in the country with a 10-3 record and a 6-2 mark in the ACC. Statistically, Miami was a lot of fun to watch, as Cam Ward was one of the top quarterbacks in the country, throwing for 4,300 yards with 39 touchdowns. He was incredible. In terms of the running game, Damian Martinez, the transfer from Oregon State, would end up rushing for over 1,000 yards, and he also had 10 touchdowns. Backup running back Mark Fletcher also had a really good year, as he had 607 yards and 9 touchdowns, and then Jordan Lyle and A.J. Allen also both got an opportunity to get on the field. In terms of the running game, things were good. At the receiver spot, Xavier Restrepo became the number 1 option like he was the year prior, finishing with 69 catches for 1,100 yards and 11 touchdowns. Jacoby George and Isaiah Horton were the next 2 main targets for Cam Ward, and they both combined for about 1,500 yards and 13 touchdowns on 100 catches. Elijah Arroyo became one of the best tight ends in college football. Sam Brown Jr. made an impact, and true freshman Elijah Lofton also ended up showing he had a lot of potential for the future. Francesco Malinois would end up leading the team with 96 total tackles. Simeon Barrow Jr. and Tyler Barron both had 5.5 sacks. Daryl Porter Jr. led the way with 7 pass deflections, and Michelle Powell led the way with 5 interceptions. Miami ended up having some decent players on the defense, but they just could not get stops when it mattered, and some of these guys are now off to the NFL. Cam Ward went with the number 1 overall pick to Tennessee. Elijah Arroyo, the tight end, went in the 2nd round to the Seattle Seahawks. Guard Jalen Rivers went in the 5th round to the Bengals. Francisco Malinois ended up going in the 5th round to the Jets. Tyler Barron went in the 5th round to the Jets. Their kicker went in the 6th round to the Patriots, and Damian Martinez got scooped up by the Seahawks. Miami ended up having 7 players drafted, which was really good for them, but they'll have to replace some of these guys going into 2025. In terms of Miami's recruiting class, it would rank number 13 in the country, and it was headlined by Hayden Lowe, a 5-star recruit from Oaks Christian School in California, and then guys like Gerard Pringle Jr. and Brock Schott. A lot of those freshmen are definitely intriguing, but the transfer portal is where they did a lot of work, as it ranks number 3 in the country. They will need plenty of that returning talent, as they grabbed Muhammad Toure, a linebacker from Rutgers, Keontae Scott, a corner from Houston, Shamar Brown, a running back from North Dakota State, Jacoby Thomas, a safety from Tennessee, Tony Johnson, a receiver from Cincinnati, Bert Auburn, the awesome kicker from Texas, Kamal Bonner, linebacker from NC State, Carson Beck, quarterback from Georgia, Xavier Lucas, who that's an interesting story in itself, a corner from Wisconsin, Jack Nickel, a tight end from UAB, Ethan O'Connor, a corner from Wazoo, Alex Bowman, a tight end from Tulane, James Brokermeyer, TCU, Emmanuel Carnley, a corner from Arizona, David Blay Jr., a defensive lineman from Louisiana Tech, Charles Brantley, a corner from Michigan State, Zechariah Poyser, a safety from Jacksonville State, and finally CJ Daniels from LSU. That was a lot of names, and if there's one thing you can pick up on, they got a lot of talented players, especially at that wide receiver spot, and I'm excited to see what those guys can do next year. In terms of the depth chart, the quarterback spot is an interesting one, as they grabbed Carson Beck from Georgia on a huge hefty NIL deal, and while he's considered one of the best quarterbacks in college football, I'm definitely curious to see how he's going to do, especially trying to follow in the footsteps of Cam Ward. Behind him, you have Emory Williams, and then true freshman quarterback Luke Nickel, who absolutely blew up late in the 2024 class. At the running back spot, you'll return Mark Fletcher, and he'll immediately become one of the better running backs in the country, as he was really good last year and will now get number 1 back level of carries. You also have both Jordan Lyle and then North Dakota State transfer Shamar Brown. I really like this running back room, and the receiver spot is going to be very interesting. I think the top option for the team is going to be CJ Daniels, who spent time at Temple and LSU, and then they also have guys like Joshua Moore, JoJo Trader, Keelan Marion, Tony Johnson, Ray Joseph, Malachi Toney, and some talented true freshmen. At tight end, they'll have to replace Arroyo, who went off to the NFL, and you'll have Elijah Lofton probably step up, and then Alex Bowman, and then maybe Nickel. Like some of you guys have figured out, I'm not even going to try to project the defense and the offensive line, as there's just so many moving pieces, so many moving parts, and not a lot of accurate information. So we're really just going to stick with a lot of the skill players. But my favorite player on defense for Miami next year is going to be Ruben Bain. And I'm definitely also going to keep my eyes on Xavier Lucas and Zechariah Poyser, both of which were transfers. I've got a couple of takeaways, and it's that 1, the defense should be a little bit better than last year. 2, I think they're going to have a really solid running game. And 3, there are some question marks about who's going to be the top wide receiver. CJ Daniels played against better competition last year at LSU and didn't do much. And then Keelan Marion and Tony Johnson on paper should be next up for them, but we'll see how they can adjust to being Carson Beck's number 1 option. They need a true number 1 wideout, and I hope Carson Beck doesn't have any growing pains. But yeah, they have a good roster, and how is it going to translate to wins and losses? Well, in week 1, they'll face off with Notre Dame, as this is one of the premier games of the first weekend of college football, and it's going to be a lot of fun. I've already done my Notre Dame preview, so you guys have already heard my pick, but I'm picking Miami to win this game. Notre Dame is good, but they have a couple of question marks and some new players, especially at the quarterback spot. And I think the fact that they're at home, and Carson Beck's been in many of these situations, so I think Miami's going to win and get off to a good start. After that, they'll play Bethune-Cookman, who I feel like they play every single year, and then they once again will play against USF. Last year, this game against the Bulls was on the road, and while USF is solid, I don't think Alex Golesh or the Bulls really have what it takes to pull this win off, especially at Miami, and that's why the Canes moved to 3-0. After that, they'll play another difficult opponent, as they will face off with Florida. The Gators are getting a ridiculous amount of hype for 2025, due in part to 3 reasons. They had a ton of young players get minutes last year, DJ Lagway is their quarterback and is expected to take off, and they finished last season with a lot of momentum. I think Florida will be good, and they'll remember how they got boat raced last year, so this game should be close, but it's at home, and I'm picking Miami, 4-0. After that, they go on the road to play against Florida State, and this is a good rivalry game, but I don't necessarily think it's going to be all that close. Florida State has a lot to figure out after going 2-10 last year, and I'm not a big fan of Tommy Castellanos. He's annoying a lot of people right now, and he's definitely going to try to beat Miami with his legs, but I'm sure they're already scheming around him. Maybe it could be close, maybe they pull off the upset, but my official prediction is that on paper, Miami wins this game. After that, they will face off with Louisville, who should be near the top of the ACC this year, as they have Miller Moss, return a couple of solid running backs, and have Jeff Brom's high-flying offense. This is also another game that I think will be close and one of the top matchups in October, but I'm going to pick Miami to win. That wraps up the first half of their season, and I have them going 6-0, and so far they've gotten bailed out by a pretty helpful schedule with a lot of their big games at home. Going into the second half of the season, they split home and away, as their first game will come against Stanford. Under head coach Frank Reich, which is really weird to say, Stanford is in absolute pieces right now and should not be competitive, so Miami will win this game pretty easily. As we now move into the month of November, it's the same story as last year. The Canes will be undefeated and headed to the college football playoff, but now they have to go beat SMU. Honestly, I have no idea what to make of this year's SMU team. Obviously, they went to the college football playoff last year and returned their quarterback from that, but I don't really know. I have no clue who their main weapons are. I don't know if they were just lucky last year, but with this game being at home, it's at least going to be intriguing. I could definitely see it as an early November upset, but I don't have enough faith in SMU to pick this one, and I have Miami going to 8-0. From there, they finish out their next 4 games, with the first one being against Syracuse. Fran Brown did a tremendous job at Syracuse last year, but he lost his top quarterback, top running back, and I believe top 3 wide receivers, so there's not a whole lot of reason to think that Syracuse will be all that good this year, unless he did a really good job in the portal and in high school recruiting, but that's why I also have Miami winning this game, 9-0. They then play against NC State, who to me has not shown much over the last 2 years, and I don't have a lot of faith in the Wolfpack, and Miami will win that game too. To close out the year, they'll have 2 straight road games, and honestly, this feels a lot like 2017 and 2024. If you remember right, back in 2017, they dropped a road game to Pitt and ended up missing out on the college football playoff due to that, and then last year they dropped a road game to Syracuse. How will Miami handle 2 straight road games? I don't know. Between 2023 and 2024, Virginia Tech looked like one of the next best teams in the ACC with a good quarterback in Kyron Drones, but they sort of fell off last year. Drones is back, and after last year's Hail Mary didn't count, I'm sure he's pretty annoyed by that. Blacksburg will be rocking and wanting an upset. I do not have enough faith in them to pick this upset, and what could be close, Miami wins and gets to 11-0. It really is like 2017 again, and they'll go on the road and play against Pittsburgh. Instead of a true freshman Kenny Pickett, this time it'll be Eli Holstein. Pitt was one of the best teams in college football through the first 2/3 of the season, but then lost all the rest of their game. Good news is they return a lot of their key players from last year, and Pitt notoriously pulls off some upsets. Just like Virginia Tech and SMU, I don't have enough faith in any of these teams to really pick the upset. A lot of it would just sort of be guessing at this point, but here's what I'll say. On paper, Miami should go 12-0, but in reality, I think they'll go 11-1. Miami has not shown enough for me to have faith that they can go undefeated, but I don't really necessarily know where that loss will come from. They have 3 challenging road games in SMU, Virginia Tech, and Pitt, good teams at home in Florida, Louisville, and Notre Dame, and I'm sure they lose one of them, but I just don't know where. No matter what though, Miami gets to the ACC title game and gets themselves a spot in the college football playoff, and depending on the matchup, I would maybe pick them or maybe wouldn't. A lot of this is based on how Carson Beck will play, and if the defense makes serious strides, but as I said, on paper, Miami should be a playoff contender, win double-digit games, and be a lot of fun to watch. But what do you guys think? Where do you think the most likely loss comes on this schedule? How do you think the Canes will do this year? And what did I get right and wrong? Be sure to let me know down below, leave a like if you want to support today's video, subscribe if you're new, and check out one of the videos on the end screen. I hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.